Hello there, and welcome to our podcast, Coaching Outdoors. I'm Alex Byrne, and I have my partner in crime, Anna Marie, with me here today. And we have our special guest today is Nick Smith. So, Nick, could I ask you to introduce yourself to our listeners, please?
Hi, I'm Nick from Squarepegs Coaching. I'm based around Glasgow, and I have done coaching in the outdoors for almost as long as I can remember, because I love being out there, and as a place to work for me, it works. And for people who come to me, it works for them too. So yeah.
And what we always want to glean is a little bit of the backstory. And we ask all our guests to share their earliest memory of being outdoors. And what is it specifically that you enjoy about being outdoors?
I might struggle with my earliest, but certainly some of my early memories are being on family holidays in Argyll and just being able to roam wherever I wanted. And I think for me, freedom is quite high on my list of values, and the freedom that comes with being outdoors and being able to go just wherever I want and not being constrained by you must walk down this road kind of thing. So yeah, being beside the sea is good, but then I sometimes feel constrained if I'm on the beach. So sailing works for me. But yeah, being out in the hills and having that chance to see for miles and to be able to walk for miles if I choose, or just wander around where I'm at. So that's kind of what does it for me, the open space aspect of being outdoors.
It's quite fascinating. There hasn't been much research done on coaching outdoors as such, but the small amount of anecdotal evidence that we've gathered from people that we coach with and other people, people love that aspect of the freedom, as you mentioned there, and that open space in front. And it seems to be a common theme that a lot of people feel, both the coach and the coachee as well. So what's your coaching backstory? How did that love of the outdoors and roaming wild and your sort of childhood outdoors, how did that translate into a business and becoming part of your career and what you do for a living?
I suppose the two strands of coaching in the outdoors kind of eventually came together 15 or 20 years ago. So I had done lots of stuff in the outdoors and eventually was working as an outdoor instructor and doing youth work on the side. And looking back now, I see that coaching was kind of my methodology for youth work. But it was only when I started working with leaders in corporate settings, doing training for them, that I recognized that coaching was my style with them. And then thought, well, I love being outdoors and I love the coaching aspect of helping people reach their potential. So why not try and put it together? And so I tried one just as I wonder if it would work kind of thing. And it did. And so I started talking to people as to, would this work for you? And started putting it out there and realized that actually there was a market for it. And it was something a bit different. And it kind of went from there. So from 2008 onwards, I have specifically been offering coaching in an outdoor context, for particularly nowadays for technical leaders who want to be better at dealing with people.
And I love the way that you've kind of drawn from the kind of the two strands of, like, the adventure training and then the coaching, and then actually how they kind of merge, but actually that realization that how actually all along there's been a coaching approach. And I can really resonate with that. I was in the military for 9 years, and actually that was very much my leadership style when I was working with my soldiers. And for me, I'd led expeditions all around the world with students. And again, it was very much that, walking alongside somebody, you're away, you're up in the mountains, whether it's in Nepal, Ecuador, Morocco, and actually the conversations you have are very much at like a different level. And then how that kind of translates into the business world, and how you then kind of take it into that. But what we would love to do is to kind of get a little bit practical, and find out about your coaching. And just to kind of start off with, up in Scotland, where do you normally meet your clients?
Normally is an interesting word, but I suppose if I was to generalize, normally I meet them somewhere close to where they are. You know, I have a number of good walks that I will use if I can that are around Glasgow. But if someone is even down in Ayrshire, I would rather travel to them and use a walk that might open their eyes to their local area. And so, yeah, I will pour over a map and find things that work for them near to them so that they can go and use it again. Because I think for me, I love opening people's eyes and they go, oh, I didn't realize this was on my doorstep. Fine, go and walk it again. So yeah, somewhere near to them is what I would say.
And it's interesting when you mentioned about your own sort of history with being outdoors and your affinity, and you talked about being near the water, and that is one of the locations where we can go with our coachees, one of many types of locations. Are there any particular locations that you find support coaching outdoors more than others? Or do you have any specific examples or stories that you can tell us about particular locations that have worked really well in a particular context with a coachee?
I think there are, hey, where I live, there are lots of brilliant places, but I think there are some places that I have used that I've decided in retrospect I won't go back there, and they tend to be places that are a bit busier, and so there are other people on the pathway, which it's not usually an issue for the coachee, but if we're having to kind of slalom our way through bodies, then it's not ideal. But I do like something that has a wider than just really narrow single track, because if we get to the point where we are constrained and have to walk one in front of the other, it's not brilliant then either. If it's wide open hillside, that's fine. I can just walk through the hard bit and they walk on the path. But sometimes where it's constrained, it's like I won't come back here. But generally, I tend to look for things that are not too technical. If something is too steep or too rocky, then they're too focused on where do I put my foot next. And I find it's really hard to write notes and walk if I'm having to think about where I'm walking as well as think about writing. So yeah, I'm just thinking about places. I have been up in Monroe once because they specifically asked for it, and that was fine. He was fit enough, and we wanted the whole day. But generally, folks tend to ask for flatter things, and I would tend to look for flatter places where they won't get out of breath and they don't have to be concerned about getting out of breath, and they kind of subconsciously think, yes, this is within my limits. So yeah.
And within the environmental context, clearly risk kind of comes into play. And actually, as coaches, how do we manage this risk? Because ultimately, as soon as we kind of step outside the safety of four walls, you never really know what is going to happen. And this element of risk, it kind of can come down to two parts. There is the physical side of things, but there's also the psychological safety side of things. And psychological safety at the moment seems to be very much trending. It's a bit of a buzzword. So just to kind of pick your brains, what would you recommend for coaches to ensure that their practice is safe from a physical and a psychological safety perspective?
I think it's interesting. Psychological safety is something that I talk about a lot, but I was thinking about it in terms of coaching, and actually some of it is just the kind of limits we would put in place for ourselves in any kind of coaching. Outdoors is no different to that. But I think one of the things I have recognized that I am not as good at is the reassuring people that I know what I'm doing in the outdoors as well as indoors. And from a physical safety perspective, even if it's, well, pretty much all the walks that I would do, even if it's around the park, I will have a rucksack with a first aid kit and things like that in it, just in case. And I'm always prepared enough to deal with whatever may happen, wherever we are. But I'm not always explicit about that. And I have, particularly in some of the networking I've done, I have had people ask questions that have surprised me, because for me, it's natural that we will go out on the hills or out on any walk and be well prepared. It's just, that's my background. But I think too, there's an aspect of of risk assessment that, again, I kind of think of as being, it's normal, because that's the background that I've come from. Wherever you're taking a group, you either have been before, and so you know everything that probably will be there, even though you might not have done it for a few days. But also in my head, I've got a risk assessment of, these are the hazards that I will likely encounter. And then another bit of my kind of in the moment head is actually checking, what are the other potential risks here? And dynamic risk assessment for me, I suppose, it's almost a subconscious thing that as we're walking, I'm kind of scanning to see what else might jump out of the trees and bite us.
It's really interesting that you brought up all those points, because I think from Anna Marie and I have had many conversations about this, about the idea that, part of this the reason for having this podcast series is to encourage people to look into and consider taking their coaching practice outdoors if they haven't already, or for coachees to try outdoor coaching if they haven't. And, we don't want to scare people off. We want to show people that it is absolutely possible. But at the same time, we want to make sure that people understand all the aspects of outdoor coaching and not just assume that it's the same as indoor coaching, just without the walls around it. So it's great that you brought those aspects up, and I think it's critical for us to share those. We would be remiss ourselves if we didn't bring those aspects to people's attention. What would you say to coaches that wanted to maybe try outdoor coaching you haven't done, around the idea of the safety aspect that Anna Marie just asked you about? What sort of things can they do to really sort of think about it and plan for themselves in advance?
I think if they've never done it, pick a walk that you know. Pick the walk where you take your dog every day, so that actually you're not, the walking aspect of it and the navigation aspect just isn't an issue. You can do that bit almost with your eyes closed. And then you can go for some coaching, try it, and see how it works for you. How comfortable are you not being face to face, and how comfortable are you? So I take notes in a wee waterproof notepad, and actually being able to walk and write notes, it has become an art form. So are you happy with that? Are you comfortable with the idea of not looking where you're going because you're busy thinking and just navigating as you go? But yeah, try it and see. And if you think this works for me, then yeah, try it some more. If you then want to go to places where you've never been before, then go and scout them out. Go and, if I'm going somewhere where I'm really not sure, I'll take my bike around the route. So, you're not spending ages doing it, but yeah, I've seen what there is to see, and I can see where the paths go. And certainly up with us in the west of Scotland, how muddy is it actually going to be? Is it a wellies or a waders walk? So yeah, I think try it and see how it works. And if in doubt, talk to someone who's an expert. Someone who's got a qualification in being outdoors is worth talking to, just to see what they would be looking out for.
Yeah, that's great. I love the idea about wellies and waders, especially up here in Scotland. The other one is in the summer times, midges, especially over here on the west coast. Do you need your midge net and your midge hat or your midge spray? Yeah, there's all these things to think about. So it's lovely to hear your thoughts there on the sort of practical aspects of outdoor coaching. And the next sort of topic we'd like to focus on for this podcast is also the wider system around outdoor coaching, and looking at it from not necessarily the practicalities of the actual activity itself, but the wider aspects of it. Some people come to these sorts of things really interested in evidence, to say, this is the evidence that shows that coaching outdoors has a benefit. These are the proven benefits of outdoor coaching. We can see there's lots of evidence out there and lots of research into the benefits of being outdoors, but not necessarily so much actually specifically about outdoor coaching. So first of all, do you think it's important to have an evidence base behind what we do? And if so, what do you think we as a coaching community can do to improve that and to sort of really show people the benefits that we experience on a day-to-day basis?
I'm not sure, is my honest answer. Part of me thinks it would be great if there was some research-based evidence that said these are the benefits. But then part of me, I suppose, because there isn't, I've not ever had to or tried to rely on it. So for me, it's about, you know, I know people like you who have had these benefits. Do you want to talk to them, kind of thing, and using those kind of case studies. But there's definitely a sector of the population who want to know in advance that they will get results, and it's coaching. I can't guarantee the results that you will get because it's about you, but I can at least maybe help you to understand how it could be really good for you. But if there was, particularly if there were some numbers, I think there are people in business who want numbers about, you know, how is this going to affect my bottom line, and I'd love it if there was some research along those lines. As to how we can get it, I suppose that's not my, it's not my background and my forte, but maybe, you know, with a community of people doing the stuff, we can then collectively gather enough evidence that we can start to draw some sort of valid conclusions that are not just, you know, I talked to 3 people who came walking with me, because I think there are lots of people coaching outdoors, and if we were together thinking about it, then yes, we could come up with maybe some numbers, but definitely some more quantitative rather than just qualitative kind of research about it.
The power of numbers, all about the return on investment. Oh, as coaches, we can get quite sidetracked by that. Though, you know, in this day and age, the need for evidence-based is there. There is this whole kind of scientific side of it. You know, it is very much the art and science of coaching. And how do we pull that in? And yes, how can we use it to illustrate what we actually do? So, you know, we are in this niche that is growing. And, you know, I'm really excited about the next, you know, 5, 10, 15 years of what will actually emerge. And, you know, this leads us very nicely into our next kind of question around collaboration. And there has been a growing number of coaches who are taking their practice outdoors. And it's almost easier to find us now because we're on the internet. And that is what kind of connects us through these virtual networks. And that's very much how, you know, I got to know you, and I've gotten to know Alex a lot more. You guys up in Scotland and I'm down in cloudy Wiltshire today. And the fact that there are more of us, is it a good idea for us to kind of network and collaborate more? If so, you know, what should we as individuals be doing to encourage and promote this?
Yes, I think there's definitely benefit in collaborating, you know, even if it's just a sharing of ideas, because the outdoor coaching world is so broad, and we're doing things, you know, even between the 3 of us, we're doing things just subtly differently, even though we're all coaching outdoors. And I think this kind of thing, it awakes other ideas in us, and oh yeah, I haven't tried doing it that way. Maybe I could. And you know, this idea that we can learn from each other, and particularly, I mean, yeah, with someone in Wiltshire, we're never going to be in competition. But actually, even if we were, learning from each other is, for me, it's key. Learning is another one of my key values. That, you know, if I can help other people learn just from, you know, talking about my experiences, and I will learn from theirs. So yeah, some kind of sharing option, even if, you know, what good routes do you know around Glasgow or around Edinburgh, or yeah, if I had to come to Argyll, where would I go? You know, that in itself, because I know for me, I spend quite a chunk of time with a map trying to find good routes for someone in an area that I've not used before. So yeah, something like that would be good.
And I think you're absolutely right about the competition side of things. I mean, you and I, we're less than 40 miles away from each other as the crow flies, but, you know, at the moment, tears away from each other, literally COVID tears away from each other.
Oh,
but
yeah.
we, you know, but even if you know, we use a similar sort of area and location, but there's, I mean, you know, you know Scotland a lot better than I do, but it's such a huge place to go. There are so many different walks, so many different locations, so many different types and styles. And I hold my hand up. I don't actually have an outdoor qualification myself. So I do my coaching, and obviously would probably do my coaching in a different way to you guys who do have that kind of qualification. So people like myself who think, well, I don't have an outdoor qualification, that's okay. But as you mentioned before, you plan your routes around not just your coachees' capabilities and abilities and the safety, but also your own as well. So you're absolutely right. I think the competition side of things, we shouldn't be protectionist, should we? We should be supporting, helping, and encouraging each other.
And just as you're saying that as well, though, Alex, I'm thinking, some of a good coach is about do we fit? And if someone comes to me and says, yeah, I want coaching, and then they think, actually, no, Nick, you're not the person for me. If I have a collaboration with other people vaguely close to Glasgow, and I can say, okay, you want outdoor coaching, but you don't want to come to me, fine, go and talk to Alex, or go and talk to someone else. And I think that as a way of helping each other is good.
And that power of referral as coaches and between coaches is absolutely key. And I've benefited from a business perspective because I've had other coaches refer me clients, and I've done likewise. When I've had clients that have come to me that maybe the fit hasn't worked so well, or actually we've reached a point in our coaching partnership where it's maybe time to go and sample another coach, then kind of move on. And you never know in the future, 5, 10, 15 years down the line. I know I'm in this profession for the long haul. I love it. And actually, how can we collectively encourage more people to work with a coach, because the benefits are right.
Yeah, I think together, if we can promote outdoor coaching as a good option, then we all benefit. But yeah, I think just as you were talking there, I was also thinking, I've had 1 or 2 friends who want coaching, and I'm like, I'd love to help you, but I'm really not the best person. And so again, knowing other coaches is good.
Mm-hmm. And I think the other thing as well is not just sort of sharing knowledge of each other and our network, but also knowledge of the resources that are out there that you might have used yourself, or that you might be able to point people in the direction of. Are there any resources that you particularly, it might be books that you've read, or articles, or webinars you've seen, or anything like that? Are there any resources out there that you might recommend to coaches who want to start and try this outdoor coaching life?
Not off the top of my head. I think I have read so much around kind of the outdoor and the leadership and stuff, but there's no one book that I would say, yes, you must read this. Although I think there are a number of kind of seminal works within the outdoor kind of industry that are interesting. But I think if you just want to do coaching in the outdoors, then I'm not entirely sure where I would point you. The one resource, or the one bit of training that I think has been brilliant for me, it's not specifically, well, it's not just an outdoor qualification that I got in the past, was my outdoor NLP. So instead of just doing a bog standard NLP practitioners, I went and did an outdoor NLP practitioners, and that is probably the best piece of training I have invested in the last 20 years. And so, yeah, if you're looking at NLP to be part of your coaching, and you're thinking about going outdoors, then yeah, definitely, it's worth doing. I did mine with Sugar NLP, and they were great. So yeah.
Well, I've just learned something totally new today. I didn't actually know there was a specific NLP course with the outdoor focus. So I mean, that's wonderful. And when we launch when we share our podcasts, we will have a website with links to these kinds of resources. So Nick will follow up with you after today and see if we can find out a bit more about that, and we can pop a link on our website in the resources section to anyone who might find that interesting as well, and look for a bit more information around that. So we've asked you some great questions, and you've given us some amazing answers, Nick, today. And for our listeners, where might they find you if they were interested in knowing more about Nick and contacting you in the future? What's your contact information?
When you said where would they find me, I thought you were going to ask for where in the world are. So I'm in Glasgow, but you'll find me on squarepegscoaching.com. and that then is a link to all my other kind of bits out on the internet. But yeah, the west of Glasgow is where I'm based.
So I'd just like to put everything together and thank Nick for your time today, talking about your backstory and how you got into coaching, touching on some of the environmental practicalities, and then kind of taking a step back and look at the wider system. And before we go, I would just really like to draw attention. I know that if you are listening in, you can't see where we are all stood, but I'm in Wiltshire. It's a little bit cloudy, but I have to say that Alex and Nick, if you just share where you are and briefly describe the views, which I'm having kind of a little bit, it's been delightful looking at the screen while they've been doing this recording.
Okay, so I am just on the edge of Glasgow. I'm relatively close to the kind of urban landscape, and I can see tower blocks in one direction, but I can see hills in the other direction, looking out towards Dungoyne and Loch Lomond and things like that. And yeah, it's a dry day and almost sunny, which has been great. One of the things I didn't mention in logistics that then came back to me was forecasts. Weather forecasts are quite important when it comes to outdoor coaching. Worth checking them out. But yeah, Glasgow is good, whether it's rainy or dry. So yeah.
Yeah, and I'm just a little west of Nick, over on the Argyles. It's actually called the Argyll Secret Coastline. I suppose the nearest town is Dunoon, but we're a little further on from Dunoon. And in the background, you can see this is the Isle of Bute, beautiful Isle of Bute, one of my favourite places. And the water behind me is the Kyles of Bute, which is the water that runs around and feeds into the Firth of Clyde, which runs to pretty much where Nick is. So we're not too far from each other as the crow flies. But yes, it is a beautiful day, and even, Nick mentioned about the weather forecast. The one thing I would say is, again, anecdotal evidence that people have shared is people might be a bit nervous about the rain to start with and think, let's just stay indoors, but give it a go outside, because sometimes some of the most amazing walks you'll ever have are in the rain. And I personally absolutely love walking in the rain. But on days like this as well, it's also just as beautiful. So thank you for asking, Anna Marie. It's nice to be able to share, just to show that it's not always raining in Scotland.
No, it's not. Wiltshire's the cloudy one today. Yeah, you can kind of see the trees behind me, and just behind the trees is actually the canal, the Avon Canal. So I kind of come down here in my camper van, which you can see like a little bit of it. So I'm just perched by my van. But anyway, Nick, thank you so much for sharing your expertise and your knowledge today. If you are listening in and would like to find other guests, and we have got a right delightful catalogue of different coach practitioners from Scotland and also down to the southern tip of England. We've had a recent coach from Cornwall, and then everything in between as well. And we're also going to be looking at interviewing experts on different kind of theories around the outdoor space to kind of give it a bit of a contrast between the practitioner and then also what kind of theories can be drawn into it as well. So look forward to that in later episodes. Hopefully, if you're listening in, you'll have found our website already, and that's how you've accessed this podcast. But just to remind you, it is coaching-outdoors.com. That is coaching-outdoors.com. And just remember, that hasn't just got the podcast, it's got links to loads of different resources as well, which are really great to check out and develop your practice even further. So thank you for taking the time to listen in. If you have any comments or feedback, it would be great to hear them. You can connect to us through LinkedIn. And hunt us out. And yes, let's continue the conversation. Have a great day.